All right, so what I want to do is go over a few things related to the volitional verbs that we were learning about in chapter 20 that you listened to my presentation on. And to do that, I want to invite you to look up at this Cal Imperfect paradigm, because it's on the basis of this that we're going to form the volitional verbs. Now, what does volitional mean? Expressing the speaker's will. Volitional verbs are verbs which express the speaker's will. Eat more chicken. There you go. Who is expressing their will that we eat more chicken? The cows. That's right. Eat more chicken. That's volitional. I want you to eat more chicken. What will determine what the person of the person doing the verb is? Well, it's who I want to act, right? I'm the speaker, but if I want me to act, I use first person forms. If I want you to act, I use second person forms. And if I want someone besides I, we, and you, y'all to act, then I use third person forms. Now, these volitional verb forms have names, right? What did we call them? The first person forms are the cohortative. Cohortative. Say that with me. Cohortative. The second person forms are called imperatives. And it's imperative that you learn that. I'm going to exhort you to learn the cohortative and imperative. And then the third person forms we generally think of as the jussives. That's right, the jussive forms. So let's look at the Cal Imperfect here, because the cohortative, imperative, and jussive forms are built off of the imperfect. All right? If you know the imperfects and you know the basic principles for how to form these, then you'll be able to identify the volitional forms. They use the imperfect conjugation pattern with some minor variations, at least in some cases. So take a look here. These Cal Imperfects with these nutty prefixes, we typically have translated as future. So he will appoint, you, she will appoint, these are you will appoint, and I will appoint. And we're going to go ahead and just take our line and we're going to divide into these portions here, okay? And I want you to notice then that it's the third person forms that are going to, for the most part, be our jussives. The second person forms are addressing yous, so those are imperative. And the first person forms are cohortative. All right, now let me just make one comment here about my abbreviation. How do I abbreviate imperfect? IMPF. That F is important. How do I abbreviate imperative? IMPV. Some of you up until this point have been abbreviating the imperfect as IMP. And then you're going to get to the imperatives and you're going to try to abbreviate those as IMP so that you can confuse me and make me not count you off for how you parse these things. Not going to do it. Not going to let you do that. Okay, so please go ahead and use IMPF for imperfect and IMPV for imperative. All right? Now, how do we form the jussive, which we're going to translate as let someone do X, right? In this case, let him, if it's 3MS, let him visit or appoint. How would I tweak the form of the imperfect to make it jussive?
You don't.
I don't. This is the good news about the jussive, is that the jussive and the imperfects are hard to distinguish. You need a special Hebrew microscope to do it, and you haven't been equipped with one yet. All right? So we're not going to be able to tell the difference. So theoretically, Yifkod could be he will appoint, Cal Imperfect, or let him appoint, Cal Jussive. Okay? Tifkod could be the same. She will appoint, or if it's Jussive, let her appoint. Or may she appoint. That'd be the other way to do it, right? May subject do X. Okay. Yifkadu and tifkodna, same thing. Either they will appoint or let them appoint. Or may they appoint. So, we're good. We already know the jussive because we already know the imperfect. Yippee! All right. Now, imperatives. Those are second person forms. What did we learn about the imperative? You take the second person forms, which all have prefix what? Prefix tav. Okay, and what are we going to do to the prefix tav? You're going to drop it. You're going to cut off the head, right? If we're reading from right to left, this is the beginning. I like to call this chopping off the head. Because Hebrew, as you know, is a violent language. So we're going to chop off the head, chop off the prefix. What am I going to be left with? I'm going to be left with a vocal shava under the pei here for root 1. P code. Now, the Keurig in the imperfect causes my dagesh lene to go away in the pei, but now that it's the beginning of the word, guess what? It gets to come back. So it's pakod. Pakod. Say that with me. Pakod. So that means visit. The Chick-fil-A cows say visit. Visit Chick-fil-A. Pakod. For the imperative 2fs, once I chop off the head, I'm left with a pei with a shava under it. It was a silent shava, but look, it's now at the beginning of the word. It's vocal. And this shava was already vocal, tifke di. And what am I going to have to do to resolve this problem? I'm going to have to employ the Red Ryder BB gun, right? And when that happens, this is going to become a big, fat Keurig. Pick D. Pick D. Okay? And then that will become a silent shava. So, say that with me. Pick D. So, you woman, visit. Okay? Pekadu, when I've chopped off the head, becomes what? Pikdu. Right. So I've got these Keurigs here, right? Pikdi, pikdu. So pekod, vocal shava, and then pikdi, pikdu. Y'all, male, or mixed company. Y'all, appoint, visit. And then when I chop off the head on tifkodna, I'm left with a vocal shava, but there's no vocal shava following it, so it's good to stay right there. Pekodna. Okay? Pekodna. So say that with me. Pekodna. And that's telling a group of women to visit or appoint. All right. So, did I have to change any endings here? Nope. They're all the endings you've come to know and love. They're your friends. Okay. Yes, Kyle, you have a question. Ah, good question. I do believe that in this form it does not. Let me double check that, though. Let me just explain. I think we've talked about this before. I may be wrong, but you know how we have vocal shavas and we have silent shavas, right? So when you have a vocal shava, you vocalize it. When you have a silent shava, you don't. And then there is this in-between shava called medial shava, medial, in between. And it's vocal. It's silent enough to close a syllable, vocal enough to cause a dagesh lene not to stay put right after it. For all intents and purposes, we will pronounce it like a silent shava. Pick D. But the dalet doesn't have a dagesh lene, so it's pick D, pick D. Now, of course, many people don't distinguish, the dalet when it's got a dagesh lene and when it doesn't. But some people, i.e. Dr. Russell Fuller, one of the professors at Southern Seminary, where I did my PhD, he likes to refer to this as a political shava. Have we talked about political shava? This shava is political. That is, you know how politicians don't really have principled positions on things. So they lick their finger and they stick it in the air and they say, which way is the wind blowing? Oh, today I'll be silent. And tomorrow I'll be vocal, right? They're fence straddlers. And this medial shava is a fence straddler. It doesn't know whether it's vocal or silent. So it sort of does both. It closes the syllable but blows the Dageshlane out. All right. So those little word pictures can be helpful, I think. All right. Now for the cohortative to say, let me do something, may I do something, or very strong affirmation, I will do something, we are going to not chop off the head. Only the second persons chop off the head. Think Alice in Wonderland. Remember what the queen was always yelling? Off with their head, right? Was she commanding? Absolutely, right? She was uttering imperatives. So think imperatives, chop off the head, right off with their head. The cohortative is not going to chop off the head, just like the jussive won't. So these will still keep their prefixes. Only the imperative loses the prefix. Okay? So what's going to happen here? F code is going to retain in the cohortative that prefix olive, but it's going to add something. It's going to add a comma-te at the back side. And when I do, is my holum here going to be able to be retained when my accent moves to the back along with the dalet starting a new syllable? F code da. No, it's going to reduce to what? A vocal shava, because it's now open and pretonic, right? F kada. So that will go away. F kada. And nif code will do the same thing. Going to add a comma-te, and the holum is going to go bye-bye, reduced to a vocal shava. So I get nif kada. F kada, may I or let me appoint. Nif kada, let us appoint. May we appoint. Okay? When you want to encourage a group of people, hey, let's go into battle, you're going to use the cohortative to do that. Okay? All right. Any questions about how we form these? There's lots of familiar elements with just some slight tweaking. And I know you're sitting there going, well, that's what's killing me, is everything slight tweaking. Okay. But I get that. But what I want you to do is I want you, remember, sing your song for the imperfect. You know the prefixes and suffixes for those. If you know them for the most part, you can identify these, right? If you know the basic principles. What are the basic principles? Chop off the head on the imperfects, lose the prefix, leave the suffixes. They're all the same. And for the cohortative, leave the head, but add it to grow a tail at the end. Okay? And the third persons are identical. That make sense? Sort of? Okay, good.